Every once in a while, a shoe comes along that is just perfect for you and your feet. It's like a match made in heaven. But sometimes brands completely redesign that shoe and you're left wondering, will it be as good as your tried and true trusty friend? Well, the Hoka Mafate 5 had some big shoes to fill. And in this review, we are going to find out, does it live up to the hype of the Mafate Speed 4, or is this a completely different shoe? Let's find out. Well, what's up everyone? Welcome to the channel. My name is Steven. I want to let you know that Roadrunner Sports sent the Hoka Mafate 5 to me to test and review. They're not seeing this footage ahead of time. They're not telling me what to say. I'm going to be completely honest, which you'll find out pretty quickly, like I always am. And if you are interested in getting a pair of the Mafate 5, or any shoe for that matter, check out the link below in the description for roadrunnersports.com. It won't cost you a cent, but it will help support the channel. Well, like always, let's start off with the stats of the Hoka Mafate 5. First off, it is a neutral trail running shoe, and there is some flexibility and a little twist, but this is taking a fair amount of force to actually get some twist out of the shoe. As for the stack height, it's a lot. The thick boys are back. The men's came in at 44 millimeters in the rear and the front 36 millimeters, giving us an 8 millimeter drop. Now this is vastly different than the Hoka Mafate Speed 4, which was 33 millimeters and 29 millimeters, giving us only a 4 millimeter drop. So make no mistake about it, the Hoka Mafate 5 is tall. It is very tall. With all of that extra midsole foam, there is some added weight as well. My men's size 11 threw it on the scale and it weighed in at 12.4 ounces or 352 grams, which is 3/4 of an ounce heavier than the Mafate Speed 4. And as for the fit, it is true to Hoka sizing, so whatever your normal size is in a Hoka, you should be good to go with the Mafate 5. The upper of the Mafate 5 has also seen some changes. The upper material is now a warp knit material with anti-fray treatment, which is designed to be very durable and rugged. On the outside of that warp knit upper, there is a TPU cage kind of around the midfoot area of the foot to provide more structure and stability to that midfoot. Now the upper material does feel quite a bit different than the jacquard mesh on the Mafate Speed 4 here, but it is still incredibly comfortable when wearing over your foot. Now, of course, I wanted to see how well the Mafate 5 was going to breathe with this new material, so let's take a look at the tissue test. With the hairdryer on low, you can see that the tissue came up a decent amount. When I switched the hairdryer to high, you can see that tissue came up very quickly as well and stayed up. Now, this is definitely quite a better result than the Mafate Speed 4. The tissue test didn't really do too well for that shoe. However, I will say when running, I did not really feel a lot of airflow through this warp knit material, but my foot never really got too hot. It was okay. But overall, I will say I do think the breathability is definitely much improved over the Mafate Speed 4. Now, I also wanted to test the water drainability of this material as well, so I completely submerged my feet into this creek for at least 30 seconds, really letting that water soak into the shoe. When I stepped out onto the rock, you could see the water coming down on the rock, and when I moved my foot side to side a little bit, you could really see that water coming out of the upper material. So in my opinion, I will say that the drainability is better on the Mafate 5 than it was on the Mafate Speed 4. Now let's talk about the fit of the Mafate 5. In the toe box, it was honestly decently wide for a Hoka. I could move my feet around in the forefoot just a little bit, and honestly it does feel a bit wider than the Mafate Speed 4 did in that toe box. Also around the front there is some nice TPU overlays and a good toe bumper in the front as well, which is going to help protect from any rock or root impacts. Also at the front of the toe box here is the dynamic vamp, and it is decently stretchy. Now, this is not near as stretchy as the vamp was on the Mafate Speed 4. This part here would move quite a bit. But that is a good thing that it's not as stretchy on the Mafate 5, because sometimes it would be a little difficult to get a really good secure fit over your forefoot, because this does stretch the more you run. With this one so far, I've not had any issues with that. Moving up to the midfoot of the Mafate 5, again, it felt pretty darn good, and maybe a little bit wider than the Mafate Speed 4 for my, average to slightly narrow foot. The heel collar felt about the same really as the Mafate Speed 4, decently padded and pretty comfortable in the rear as well. I never experienced any heel slippage, and I had a good lockdown as well. And honestly, over this entire shoe, from the toes to the heel, was very comfortable, and I never felt any hot spots, any blisters, discomfort at all on that part of the shoe. It was pretty nice. Now the tongue, however, on the Mafate 5, I will say is a bit of a downgrade from the tongue that was on the Mafate Speed 4. The tongue is very thin, and if you really like to cinch those laces down, I could see that being an issue in a long run or a long race. The tongue is also quite short. I mean, you can see it's barely sticking out of the top of the shoe right here, and honestly, it's not sticking out of the top. It is very, very short. And if you are a runner that wants to utilize this upper eyelet here to tie that runner's knot, it will cause some issues across the top of your foot. The tongue probably won't even stick up underneath of those laces, and it's going to rub in just a little bit. I did actually experience, without the runner's knot, some discomfort from those laces across the top of my foot, especially when going uphill. Whether it was a steep grade or even just a moderate grade going up, I could feel those laces digging into the top of my foot. And lastly, about the tongue on the Mafate 5 here is it is not gusseted at all, whereas it was semi-gusseted on both sides with the Mafate Speed 4. So like I said, I consider the tongue a pretty big downgrade from the Mafate Speed 4. The lacing system, however, it does its job. It's pretty much the same as it was on the Mafate Speed 4. They're lay flat laces, they stayed tied, they're not too stretchy. They do their job. And finally, for the upper, there is a new piece here on the rear. Right here, there is an optional gaiter attachment. So if you want to wear a gaiter, you can clip it onto this now. However, I don't really think this is that big of a deal because I never had issues at all getting gaiters to stay on Mafate Speed 4. I wore them quite a few times and it worked out well, but I guess it's pretty cool. Overall, the upper is pretty darn nice on the Mafate 5. Definitely a lot of good improvements to the breathability and the drainability as well. It's very comfortable over your foot. I just think we need to have a little bit thicker and a little bit taller tongue. The midsole of the Mafate 5 is where the bulk of the changes occurred over the Mafate Speed 4. The midsole is a dual density foam with a top layer being supercritical for added response, and the bottom layer is a softer foam for added comfort for those long days on the trail. And sandwiched between both of those layers is what Hoka is calling the new rocker integrity technology. You can see it kind of looks like a plate a little bit, and you can actually see a little bit of it here on the lateral side and the medial side. You can see it kind of shining right there as well. It's supposed to deliver a more responsive ride even as your legs kind of fatigue on those long runs. Now, when I first put the Mafate 5 on my feet, the very first words that came out of my mouth were, "Oh man, this is so squishy. It doesn't feel anything like the Mafate Speed 4. Just standing and rocking back and forth, you can see that midsole foam compressing a lot. You can tell this is a very, very squishy midsole foam. And there's a lot of it. When running on buffed out non-technical trails, that midsole foam feels amazing. So incredibly cushioned, your feet just feel like you're running on pillows basically, or marshmallows, whatever. And I think this shoe would really excel on like a rails to trail crushed gravel kind of path. There is a little bit of response from it. It's definitely not the most responsive shoe out there, but it feels good. However, when running on technical trails, the Mafate 5 feels incredibly tall. It does not give me that same level of confidence that the Mafate Speed 4 did. I could really feel that added stack height, 44 millimeters in the rear, when running over technical trails. It just felt like I was way up off the ground, and it did not feel stable at all or confidence inspiring. Even when hiking, just, walking uphill or downhill over very technical terrain at like a 14,000 foot mountain, I tweaked my ankles a couple times, and I've been doing a lot of work in the gym to strengthen my ankles and still tweaked them with these shoes. It just felt very unstable to me. I went up to like a 8,000 foot mountain at one point as well, and I ran down. It was a pretty technical descent with a lot of rocks where you're kind of jumping from rock to rock. And it was just, I did not have the confidence that I did in other shoes, or certainly the Mafate Speed 4. I had to be much more cautious with, what I was doing, which is always good to be cautious, don't get me wrong, but you want a shoe that inspires that confidence and gives you the freedom to run down the hill. I did not have that with the Mafate 5. That ground feel that we sort of had in the Mafate Speed 4 is completely gone. Now we have a shoe that I worry is going to be relegated to the crushed gravel, buffed out, easy trails instead of the mountainous terrain that the Mafate line was designed for. Honestly, running in the Mafate 5 feels nothing like the Mafate Speed 4 that I have loved and run 3 100-mile races in, including the Leadville 100. It just feels like a completely different shoe, and it feels like Hoka took the Clifton 10, threw a Vibram outsole on the bottom of it, and called it the Mafate 5. Overall, if you can't tell, I do not like the midsole in this at all for technical trails. For buffed out stuff, feels awesome. But for technical trails, don't like it. The outsole of the Mafate 5 is still a Vibram Megagrip outsole with the 5mm traction lugs. However, they have been redesigned in shape just a little bit. If you take a look, you can see here that the design is just a little bit different. However, traction is still incredibly good with this outsole. When running on buffed out trails with loose, small rocks, the traction was absolutely amazing. When running down steep descents and hopping from rock to rock, like I mentioned on that one descent, the grip was phenomenal. I never had to worry about my foot slipping off of a rock. And when running at 14,000 feet over larger rocks that were loose, the grip was amazing. I think we all know by now that pretty much there is not a better outsole out there than the Vibram Megagrip. So it is phenomenal, grips well, and yeah, it's great. Well, I'm happy to say that the Hoka Mafate 5 still retails for $185 US, which is the same price as the Mafate Speed 4 was when it came out as well. And if this review was helpful, like I mentioned, don't forget to use the link below in the description. It will help support the channel, but it won't cost you anything extra. Well, the bottom line of the Hoka Mafate 5 is it does not live up to the standards set by the Mafate Speed 4, in my opinion. Yes, the upper has some really nice improvements to the breathability, the water drainability. It's just very comfortable. The upper feels great. But the very, very tall midsole foam, all that 44mm of it, has resulted in a shoe that is wildly unstable, in my opinion, on technical trails, and I would not recommend wearing it over anything technical. However, if you're looking for a shoe to go do like the Yeti 100 or some kind of crushed gravel rails to trail type thing, then I think the Mafate 5 is going to be awesome. Maybe it's a backyard ultra where it's in a field and it's grass and you're going to be going potentially for 2-3 days. This would be a great option. Anyway, those are just my thoughts, and I am curious to see what you think as well if you've worn the Mafate 5 and also the Mafate Speed 4 in particular. Let us know below in the comments. I'm sure your thoughts and comments will really help other people as well. Well, a shoe that I really do think is fantastic this year for the 100-mile distance, is very stable and agile and responsive, is the La Sportiva Prodigio Pro. Take a look at that full review on the screen right over there. Thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate you, and thank you to Roadrunner Sports for sending the shoes as well. I'll see you all in the next one.